how would we explain the position of President Marcos and yours regarding the lack of jurisdiction of the ICC on the drug war probe? Because some legal experts have been pointing out that under Article 127 of the Rome Statute, once the proceedings have started before the withdrawal took effect, then the ICC retains jurisdiction. So how do we explain that aspect?
It's just a practical consideration that we have to look at. No? When you withdraw from the ICC and you cease to become a member, then what activities can they hold in your country that will be sanctioned by your country as part of a treaty participant? Since you are no longer a treaty participant, you are no longer part of the ICC. So it's just logical that if you're not part of the ICC, the activities of the ICC will cease as far as your country is concerned. The jurisdictional issue then comes in, because if they want to conduct an activity in this country, it has to be sanctioned by the Philippine government. But since we are no longer members of the ICC, then what activities can be sanctioned when we're no longer part of that organization? So I think it's just practical, and it's just logical that once you withdraw from the treaty, then everything else that goes with it ceases.
So there's no room, Sec, that the ICC might resort to other means available to them to continue the probe?
To continue the probe, you need a compulsory process. A compulsory process means that you have people who will be taking oaths, and there will be a law in place. There will be the law of the state in place. So how can they, what law will they use when they start investigating in the Philippines if they will not pass through Philippine authorities? I think that's there's a change in circumstances already. We can no longer, there are two international law maxims that are applicable to this. And probably for this purpose itself, it's rebus sic stantibus, which means that there's already a change in fundamental circumstances, or fundamental change in the prevailing circumstances.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Nancy Carvajal. Sir, there are reports this morning that the senators would try to ask during EDAC to reconsider the decision of President Marcos. And how is that? Is there still room for that? This decision was reached because of President Duterte's war on drugs. So aren't we, as a country, depriving other, other countrymen if ever merong ibang kaso that would involve ICC for assistance?
I think that, first of all, you have to understand what the ICC is all about. No? It is the International Criminal Court, which was founded to run after individuals within a state, vis-a-vis the ICJ, which is put up to go against states themselves. So, when you have a functional judicial system, I think it's indisputable that our courts are functioning. The prosecution is functioning. We are here right now as part of the Department of Justice, which is in charge of prosecution of crimes, enforcement even with the NBI, corrections when you have to make people serve the penalty for crimes, correction services. We have the Bureau of Pardon and Parole, which are all internationally standard, no? And we have Parole and Probation Board. This means that we have a functioning judicial system. So I don't think that there's any deprivation involved here, since what is involved is domestic law and the way that we run our country. And it is a democratic country. The Supreme Court is fully independent of the executive, and the legislative is also completely independent of the executive. It is a functioning democracy. It's indisputable that we are a functioning democracy. So there's no deprivation involved. And if there are crimes that people want to be pursued by government, they can always go to the police, they can go to the NBI, they can go to the Department of Justice and the agencies under it, including the fiscal's offices in the cities and in the provinces. So we have a functioning judicial system. And the issue before the ICC is to run after criminals or people who commit crimes, and probably even crimes against humanity, if you want to classify them as such. So there is no deprivation at all. I don't see any, unless you can pinpoint something that you may wish to be discussed further.
Sir, some experts of the ICC are saying that yung jurisdiction, it's not only looking at whether our justice system is working. It is whether our justice system looking at the same individuals and conduct as they are. And this was tweeted also by Senator De Lima. Are you prepared to ask the question of whether these killings were ordered by President Duterte or any of his generals?
I think that it's a question with not an answer. Are you asking a question or are you stating what you think is a fact? Because I don't see a question coming from you.
It was tweeted by Senator De Lima. Are you ready to ask the question of, when you're investigating, are you ready to ask the question during the course of the investigation if this at all linked back to President Duterte or any of his
Kahit sino
generals?
pa. Wala naman tayo sinasanto eh. Kahit sino pa yan. Diba? Bakit nyo ba sasabihin na hindi namin kayang gawin itong bagay na ito? Eh, nasubukan nyo na ba yung aming will para maayos lahat yan? Diba? Para naman sobrang loaded yan na you're already presuming something that is not there as a fact. Hindi naman fact yun eh. Diba? I think that's too biased for us to even consider a statement like that.
Sir, good afternoon po. Thank you for calling the press conference, sir. So I have 3 questions para hindi ko nakukunin uli yung mic. My first question, sir, may be better answered by another agency, pero without stepping on the toes of that agency. Are there any concerns in this administration, that this move of rejecting ICC intrusion to the Philippines would make the Philippines as a pariah of sorts and would reflect poorly on the Philippines as a member of the family of nations? Sorry, yun muna yung first question ko. Second question, sir, you mentioned that 6 out of the 52 initial cases turned over to the PNP, by the PNP to the DOJ has been dismissed. Are the 6, does it involve 6 separate deaths or more deaths but in 6 cases? And the third, sir, nakalimutan ko, mamaya talaga.
Unahin natin yung paraya, no? Yung statement mo na pwede tayong maging paraya sa Community of Nations. Ang Amerika hindi member na ICC. Ang China hindi member na ICC. Ang Russia hindi member na ICC. Marami naman hindi member na ICC eh. Are they parayas? Are we saying that their systems don't work? Ano ba to? Is it a club that says, if you don't belong here, you are no good? Hindi naman eh. So it's just a choice that we have, whether to join or not to join. And I think that we are fully within our rights not to join. Diba? Hindi naman natin kailangang sumunod sa uso eh. Kung yan ba uso ba, kailangan sumunod tayo. Hindi naman ganun to, diba?
Good afternoon, Sir. Joel San Juan from Business Mirror. Although we are no longer part of the ICC, you said we're still going to provide them with information. What kind of information are you going to provide the ICC? And are you not worried that this might be used by the ICC to pursue its investigation against people involved in the anti-illegal drug?
We are following the principle of comity between nations. Due respect lang to all of them. That it's not a matter of compliance. We are not doing this because we have to comply with anything. We will just furnish them the information just to show that if they have request for the information, we will give it to them out of courtesy and comity. Yun po ang pinakamahalaga na prinsipyo po dyan.
Sir, parang voluntarily, will you be submitting information or would you wait for a specific request from the ICC?
Well, the request would be appreciated because why should we give away data to parties who are not interested in what we have to give? Kung talagang gusto nila, hingin nila sa amin, ibibigay namin. Yung kaya namin ibigay, yung available sa amin sa aming mga kamay sa oras na yan.
What kind of information are you can you give or willingly give to the ICC?
Ang example nga dyan, how our justice system is functioning. Basically, yung reflective pa rin yan ng interest ng ICC. Kasi alam namin ang gusto ng ICC, di ba? So we can give them the information that they may be interested in. Ito lang nga yan, no? Sabihin natin, may September 8 deadline. Pumasok kami dito July 1. Ilang buwan yun? So you're talking about 39 days in office, and then they expect us to pull off a miracle, answering 11 years of questions. Hindi naman siguro fair yun, di ba? 39 days pa lang kami sa opisina on September 8. Tapos, ang tanong nila, the last 11 years, ba't din nyo sabihin sa amin? Is it right? Is it fair? Diba? Yun lang naman yun eh. If they're really after fairness, and they're not really subject to any political agenda, hoping that they're not, then of course, everything would be better. Diba? Basta yun lang. In the 39 days that we're here, we will give you what we have. If you want the information for the last 11 years, because that's where it's going to anyway, alam nyo na, hindi namin kaya ibigay yan kasi 39 days lang nga kami dito.
Thank you, sir.
69 days.
Sir, naalala ko lang pala, sir. You mentioned, sir, that major superpowers have declined membership in the Rome Statute and the ICC, and so why should we? Basically, that's what you're saying. Sir, but I think, would it be proper to say that the basis of the major superpowers' rejection of the Rome Statute and the ICC was to protect their troops in imperialist, or shall we say, imperialist missions? Is it the same with the Philippines? Are we protecting abusive state troops?
Malayo yata yun. I think that's stretching it down too much. No? Malayo na yun, malayo na.
Sir, good afternoon. Bert Moso po sa DWIZ. So mas dyan sa ICC at saka sa drug war. Dito po ang talagang totoo problema. May program na ba ang kalihim namin para doon sa mga PETRED? Petition for review filed in Department of Justice. Kasi inabot na siya riyan ng may mga Jurassic cases na dyan. Na halos yung mga litigants na wala na nga yata sa mundong ito.
Okay.
Pero hindi pa rin resolve. Yun lang po.
Since we arrived here, may backlog ba tayo? We have acted on every case submitted to us on PETREV since we arrived. About the 26,000 cases that inherited, we are doing something about it. Number one, we're auditing. How many of them have already been decided by the courts? How many of them have been dismissed? And how many of them are ongoing trial and how many of them are still being pursued by the people who filed the petition for review? Now, we have options on what to do with them. After the audit, we're conducting the audit now. Let's say by the time that September comes, we will know the figures, then we go on step 2. And step 2 would probably be a very radical one. We will archive everything and tell those who are still interested in pursuing their PETREVs to file one more pleading. We will publish this in the newspaper, telling them about our intention and what they can file so that we can still look for your cases to be reviewed. Remember, 26,000 cases is more or less the average of around 7 years of cases that have been here and acted upon. So, but ang target namin, to finish everything by the end of this year. That's our target. That's our personally set target para talagang matapos na to. And then we already changed the rules on what can be appealed so that we will have limited appeals here and that most of it will just be fought in court. Except, of course, when there is a miscarriage of justice pointed out to us, then the general power of the SOJ will come in so that we can correct whatever abuses there are or whatever miscarriage of justice is being made in any part of the country.
Sir, you're saying na yung 26,000 na yon before you entered in Department of Justice, yun lang ang i-archive ninyo. Pero the rest na since July 1 na pumasok kayo, yun ang sinasabi niyo siguradong hindi ninyo pababayaan. So,
Yes.
paano sir paano magiging yung 26,000 na yan? Hindi ba parang kawawa naman yung mga
Sa
naghihintay?
26,000 na yan, ang hula lang namin sa pakiramdam namin sa tingin sa kaso, ang mga, siguro 25% of them have been decided. Nagkaroon ng desisyon ng korte. Kasi marami dyan, 10 years old na.
More than sir, more than.
More of them.
May 1900 pa dyan akong nalaman.
1990s naman.
May 1990s pa.
1990s nga, 1990. Ibig
So,
sabihin
kaya
na
nga ganun, no? Marami nga dyan dismissed na, decided na, na-arraign na, nakakulong na yung tao, namatay na yung mga akusado. Kaya nga, ano yun sa 26,000 ang mabubuhay dyan, marahil na kaso, may mga 3,000 lang yan, 3,000 cases lang yan. Ang pinakamarami ang tingin namin. Pero yan, bubunuin namin yan. We will ask all the prosecutors on duty here to help us finish these cases para we can start on a clean slate. Plus the target is really to start on a clean slate and be up to date again with our jobs for this purpose.